It is my pleasure to introduce myself as Elizabeth's colleague, Sam. This is our updated platform. We have been censored on YouTube, so we are exploring other options. YouTube will only be used for certain videos. There are many of you who know that Elizabeth had a successful podcast talk show where many politicians, doctors, scientists, philosophers, special ops soldiers, and others were given a chance to speak freely. She covered news and interesting events in the world. Apparently, truth is the enemy today, so we got censored. But don't worry, we will not stop. This is our new page where you can hear what is happening in the world, and at the same time listen to our talk show. We will have very interesting guests discussing interesting things. But don't worry, we'll also have time for celebrity gossip. So keep your ears open for the latest news on which celebrity is dating who and what stupid thing they got themselves into this time. We strive to provide the most accurate and up-to-date information to our viewers. We also strive to create a platform for open dialogue and exchange of ideas. We hope to shed light on the most pressing issues and create meaningful conversations. We are free journalists, working for people. We are not sponsored by any media source or corporations, so all we ask is, subscribe and hit a like button. It helps us keep you informed. Today's topic is Wagner Group. Canceled News has a different take on what's happening in the world. We dig deeper than most, we work harder than most, and we have connections in all countries. The Wagner private military company led by Evgeny Prigozhin launched an insurrection in Russia that began on Friday evening. Insurrection. Or at least, that's what most people believe. The armed contractors managed to seize an army headquarters in the city of Rostov-on-Don with some forces marching on Moscow. However, on Saturday's night, Wagner chief agreed to stop the advance towards the Russian capital and return his troops to their bases in exchange for security guarantees as part of a deal with Moscow, brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. What is wrong with this narrative? I always give you other perspectives, and today I will do what I usually do. Look at the situation in a different way. I do not believe this was an insurrection, and I will give you all the reasons why. Prigozhin has been very careful not to implicate Putin in any of his speeches as the guilty party, but he had plenty of offensive words for Shoigu and Gerasimov. He constantly mentioned how Putin is being lied to, and he is not getting correct information. He said in his speech how he had no problem with Russian president. Let's stop here. Really? If that is true and Prigozhin really thinks that president is misinformed, what stops him from picking up an untraceable phone and call the president himself, inform him about things he said Russian military is hiding from Putin? Maybe it's a secrecy matter? Seems to me he is okay telling the world about it, so phones should not be a problem. Even back in WW2 days, it was more than easy task to inform someone with certain spies, or through technical means. He could have informed Putin easily. He did not have to take the city for that. So, to think that he wanted to just clear up the situation is childish to believe. If that was not the real goal of Prigozhin, then what was the real reason behind this theater? Was he trying to challenge the power? Then whose power was he trying to challenge? Putin's? If so, what happens to people who challenge Putin's power? And why would Prigozhin do that? He is a Russian patriot, and he has not shown any interest in dethroning Putin in any shape or form. In fact, the opposite is true. For all the bad things he had to say about Shoigu and Gerasimov, he left Putin out of it. He said president is not getting full information. If he wanted to challenge Putin, that is certainly not how you do it. Western media has been saying that everyone who dares challenge Putin, they all die. Seems to me Prigozhin is on a cozy road to Belarus, shaking hands as he goes in his very comfortable car. Do they die or do they get a deal? Let's get the propaganda right. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Western media wants you to believe there is a crack in Russian military, and since they are telling you this through every media channel, let's discuss how ridiculous that is. I was in Russia. I spoke to Russian army and special forces. Not only they do not hate or dislike Wagner Group, but many of them admire them, and some even want to join them. I'm going to call a friend of mine from Special Forces, Alexei. I cannot display his real name. He said many guys admired the group, and this rivalry was a myth. At least many of his buddies thought this way. Yeah, a few men's opinion, but it's better than media. Now let's for a second imagine that Prigozhin lost his mind, and he thinks he is much stronger and more important than he is, and he had this idea to actually take over and conduct some kind of coup. First of all, do you really think he would walk in the city this vulnerable? Without a solid plan and solid protection? Have you seen the videos? If yes, you would agree that protection was not sufficient. Do you think he would do this with such lack of planning for his safety and almost careless? Like he was going in a supermarket with a few bodyguards? Please don't be ridiculous. Second,
If it was so easy to do this in Russia and orchestrate a coup, many would have done this long time ago. He never intended to orchestrate anything. This was all a theater played out by two best friends, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and Yevgeny Prigozhin, a man Putin literally trusts with his life. Whoever is in charge of your food and catering and many of your businesses is in charge of your life. So my opinion is, it was all thought out by these two. Why? Don't worry, we will discuss this in detail. Why did President need this? Let me explain of what I think is a brilliant play by Putin. First, he sends his best friend and partner in the front lines and gives him free rein on Wagner. Do not forget Wagner is Prigozhin's only because it was Putin's first. Without Putin, there would be no Wagner group. Everywhere Wagner goes, it does everything good for Russia, not for good of Prigozhin. And without Russian state, there will be no Wagner. The only reason it is a private company and not one of the Russian special ops is because of liability. From annexation of Crimea to Syria, Wagner did and does everything that is in Russian state's interest. What does that tell you?
Do you really think anything like this would ever be active in Russia without Putin's approvals? Wagner exists because Putin wanted it to exist. If I was the president of Russia, and I had a group like this operating in Syria, Africa, etc., who do you think I would trust to lead them? Some random Joe? Of course not. And if you are Putin, you will be more careful than most people, and the person you would put in charge as the leader of the group would be someone you trust with your life. Stakes are too high. That man, according to Putin himself, is Prigozhin. If you think Wagner would survive a day without president's full approval in Russia, you are out of your mind, and you have no idea how Russia works. Okay, so someone might say maybe Prigozhin betrayed Putin and decided he's curving his own path and he does not have to obey authorities anymore and he can do whatever he wants. In this case, what do you think would have happened to Prigozhin? He's been problematic for a while now. All it takes is one man sent to shake his hand and put something in his coffee. He is not a fighter, and he is not a general. Wagner will fight with or without him. If he is gone one day, that will not hinder Russia in any way. So if he was truly out of control, do you think Putin would tolerate such behavior from Prigozhin? If Putin really felt like Prigozhin was a threat to him? The answer is no. It would be done within moments. One special ops guy shooting him in the back during the battle and saying he died bravely. Poisoned drink, poisoned paper. I mean, I can get really creative here and go forever how easy it would be to quietly get rid of Prigozhin and say he died bravely with some of his man. Or Putin could have made an example of him, and as soon as they sat down for negotiation, Prigozhin would be arrested. You think Wagner would do anything about it? Do not be stupid. Wagner fighters know better than anyone that Putin is in charge of them, not Prigozhin. It all stops with Putin. They also understand the situation in the country, and how vulnerable they will make Russia if they attempted anything about Prigozhin's arrest. They would never dare dethrone Putin, and honestly many of them have no desire to do so. It makes no sense for them to do that. For them to even attempt such a thing, they must be sure that Prigozhin is fit to rule or someone from them is fit to rule. These men are patriots. They will not risk country's fate over one man. Such thoughts are ridiculous. Fighters would never take such a responsibility on their shoulders. And if they cannot free Prigozhin, or freeing him would make no sense, then why would they even try? Without Putin, they would not exist, certainly not in Russia. Do not forget PMCs are illegal in Russia. And next speech you would hear from Putin after Prigozhin's arrest would have been about betrayal and how certain individuals will not be forgiven if they ever decide to put Russia in danger. He would come out a strong leader that defeated the coup instead of negotiating with them, and if Wagner could not shake him, no one else would be able to. Great message to give. Don't you think that would be a better way for Putin to display his power? After all, Western media constantly tells you how ruthless Putin can be with people who betray him. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Is he ruthless or is he a pussy? Pick one. Because if Putin is everything they say he is, Prigozhin would be at minimum in prison. Wagner leaders killed for treason. But that is not what happened. Putin came out with incredibly calculated speech. He never called Prigozhin a traitor, not even once, even though he mentioned Wagner. So he talked enough to create a picture that this is a real thing. But he kept Prigozhin clear. Prigozhin did the same. Never said anything about Putin but trashed Russian generals. Is this a coincidence? No, of course not. It is a calculated plan. And when they sat down for negotiations, he not only did not arrest Prigozhin, instead, he sent him Belarus. Belarus, one of the most strategically important places for Russia. Now Wagner is stationed 100 km away from Kiev. Putin and Prigozhin had a meeting just 4 days ago. Everything could have been discussed there if needed. Prigozhin could have negotiated what he wanted to. This sounds to me like a perfect setup for Kiev offensive by Putin and Prigozhin, while killing 4 birds at a time, not 2. Smart, if you ask me. Belarus is extremely important in case of escalation of the war. As for security guarantees, are you kidding me? Think for yourself. You feel threatened by Russian states or its president in any shape or form and you go to Belarus? Does that sound smart? Even a person with IQ of 90 would not do that. Prigozhin is not stupid to think Belarus can protect or will protect him. Putin, if he needed to get to Prigozhin, he would be able to do that within hours, and Lukashenko will open the doors himself. To believe security guarantees is nothing more than childish. What did President Putin do with all this theater then? Let me explain. Not only he created a perfect opportunity to get rid of people like Shoigu, who has some serious Western ties, Gerasimov, who's been failing in his job consistently, but he did this without causing hard feelings inside the military-industrial complex of Russia. He limited Shoigu and Gerasimov and a few others in their ability to govern. He consolidated power and made sure no matter what happens in the future, none of those individuals would ever attempt to rise against him, because their names are trashed by the most beloved group in Russia and their commander Wagner and Prigozhin. To understand how respected Wagner is in Russia, you only have to look at a few volunteer videos. They clap, they ask for their autographs, they shake their hands. Wagner is clearly Russians' favorite, not Gerasimov or Shoigu. Putin displayed Shoigu and every military leader less fit to rule. Even if they tried to ever betray him or overthrow him, Russia will not accept them as leaders. That was one of the goals behind this theater. So pretty much if I knew the West is putting millions into bribing individuals around me and I was sure, sooner or later someone will break and betray me. If this is inevitable, why don't I do that myself first and create a controlled demolition for new opportunities to be built instead of waiting for the castle to come down on me because of some old cracks that might not be able to withstand the weight of the castle anymore? What Putin did with one move. He made sure Gerasimov and Shoigu would never dare betray him. They simply will be left without any support. At the same time, he just created a figure who is brave, patriotic, and determined to win the war for Russia, but is a wild card at the same time and unpredictable. That's Prigozhin. We all know how the CIA and MI6 love wild cards and how they are struggling to convert people in Russia. When you are making commercials to tell Russians to betray their government, that is a sign of desperation on the CIA's part. The CIA was given a golden goose, an approachable figure. That is the goal. If they approach anyone, it's better if it is Putin's best friend. This way you can filter the traitors at home and see who will go over the other side. Prigozhin will always be more loyal to Putin than anyone else. So Putin made sure his best friend has a new purpose, and he sent him in the best place where not only he is easily approachable by the foreign agencies, but he hopes that's exactly what happens. I know I would. He also is in perfect location with his team for Kiev offensive if needed. His best offensive team is only 100 kilometers away from Kiev, and Nuna can say anything about it. No legal ways can be taken to oppose this. Simply brilliant. Wagner is a PMC. It is not a Russian army or special forces. They can do whatever they want, so they went to Belarus. What they do in there is no longer Putin's responsibility. Say Prigozhin goes nuts and attacks Kiev. What do you want from Putin? He exiled them. Russia is not responsible. When West is pushing you to nuclear war, you better be smart enough to avoid it without putting your country in danger. This whole situation only strengthened Putin's stance, and the reason I think it was more than a brilliant play is because even the pro-Russian channels bought it. This is when you know you are the leader of the world, when every figure on the chessboard moves exactly where you want them to move. Could I be wrong about this? Absolutely. But to assume that Putin let this happen under his rules is to cross all his achievements and past actions with 2 red lines and say this is a weak leader that totally lost the grip on reality, which I really do not believe. There is no evidence to support this. This is a man that changed the world economic system. This is a man that drives a country that's sanctioned more than any other nation on earth. Yet Russia is doing just fine. You really think he is so oblivious of Wagner and Prigozhin that he allowed tanks to roll in Moscow? That is ridiculous. Many say, people died, this is real. I say, show me where. I looked at those videos, they all come from Russian sources that are state-related. They are strange and weird. Seem to me like someone made this whole thing up. When we dive deeper to understand if there is a chance this death toll is real, we could not find any names or any facts other than some videos. Like I said, if you are going to play a game, better be convincing. Putin knows how to act. He does not do it often, but he is good at it. As for Prigozhin, many are familiar of his talents from his previous shenanigans. This is a brilliant play by Russians, and honestly seeing how crazy warmongers from the West are not giving up. I hope Russia get to be successful in this play and we can finally end the war. We will keep you updated. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.